With the 2023 season now over, it is time to do my traditional top 5 best and top 5 worst drivers of the year. Now, as always, in this video, I'm going to be doing my top 5 best, and stay tuned for my next video, which will be my top 5 worst. Now, also, don't forget to let me know, as always, your top 5 in the comments box below, because it's very interesting for me to kind of compare and read your comments in terms of what your top 5 and how it compares to mine. So yeah, don't forget to let me know down below. Anyway, let's get into it. So here we are, coming in at number 5, I have got Alex Albon. Now, I really wanted to include one driver kind of in that 5th spot that isn't, Max Verstappen or one of kind of the top end drivers or kind of in that upper midfield. I wanted to include someone from kind of the lower to middle portion of the table because, there are some great drivers who did a fantastic job, even in the bottom half of the table, and I had to give Alex Albon that 5th spot. He just got in front over, actually my honorable mention would be Charles Leclerc in 6th. So yeah, I've just put Alex Albon ahead of Leclerc, but in terms of his stats, and actually, really quickly, I just explain them. I've got wins, poles, and podiums, which is, pretty self-explanatory. And then I've got the race head-to-head, the quali head-to-head versus their teammate, and then the average qualifying gap relative to their teammate as well. So, yeah, in terms of Alex Albon, I mean, he has just been, I think, fantastic this season. I really think he's... I've said it throughout the entire season, he has single-handedly given Williams 7th in the Constructors. Even if you remove kind of that 1 point that Logan Sargent scored, Alex Albon's 27 points is still enough for Williams to secure that P7. So, and actually there was a bit of pushback when I talked about that on Twitter in terms of him kind of, single-handedly propelling Williams to that P7, which is their best finisher since 2017. A lot of people kind of push back on the fact that he's had a weak teammate and obviously not too much competition, but you can only beat what's in front of you with the car that you are given. And again, that's what I meant by single-handedly. His points alone have made the difference in that bottom half of the midfield. And I mean, he has scored points 7 times this season. He has made Q3 7 times as well. And I mean, the standout drive for me was undoubtedly in Canada. That was the race where Williams brought their first big upgrade of the season, and they only had 1 set of upgrades. So if he crashed out or if he kind of damaged his car in any way, that is it for the brand new upgrades. And especially during a tricky weekend where we had loads of mixed conditions, of course a wet qualifying as well, he just drove perfectly throughout qualifying, and then in the race holding off the likes of Esteban Ocon and Bottas in arguably, especially in Ocon, in arguably a quicker car to get, that incredible P7 finish in Canada on the first time with the brand new upgrades. And that drive just defined Alex Albon and Williams. They really kind of played a few kind of tricky strategies sometimes, just leaving Alex out long and then kind of leaving him a massive job to defend from a lot faster cars behind him. But he is just, the way he's kind of dealt with the pressure this season, and obviously beating his teammate as well. I'm not going to talk too much about that because, of course, 18-3 versus a rookie Logan Sargent, 22 whitewashing him in qualifying. Of course, the last time that happened, it happened to Alex by Max Verstappen in 2020, so a bit of irony there. But the average gap over half a second quicker than his teammate. And again, you can only beat what's in front of you, but he has single-handedly propelled Williams up to their best finish since 2017, and I just had to put him on the list. He's had a fantastic season, and I'm not sure if Williams are going to be able to hold on to him for that much longer in the future if he continues on this form. Next up in 4th place, and I've actually got to be honest because the drivers in 4th, 3rd, and 2nd, if you want to kind of mix and match them, put them in whatever order you want, I would absolutely be fine. It was so close between 4th and 2nd, but in 4th place, I have got Lando Norris. I think he's had an outstanding season. He has had 7 podiums this year, of course, after the McLaren got upgraded in Austria. He just absolutely just managed to use it to the best of his abilities. Now, what's amazing actually about his 7 podiums is that only one of them did he finish in 3rd place. He's finished 2nd 6 times, so if it wasn't for that pesky Max Verstappen and that Red Bull RB19, Lando Norris would undoubtedly be a winner. He has had, obviously, a rookie teammate in Oscar Piastri, so yeah, I think he's thoroughly beaten him, but Oscar, I think, has really given a really good account on himself, so, 17.5 in the race head-to-head, 15.7 in qualifying, so a little bit closer, with an average gap of just under 2 tenths, and actually in the second half of the season, in the last 10 races, it was 5.5 in qualifying between Oscar and Lando, so yeah, Oscar definitely making a lot of progress, and I think it's really good for McLaren into next season that You know, they've got Lando Norris, one of the best drivers on the grid, you know, maybe future world champion, and a really, really strong rookie that's just getting better. So yeah, definitely a lot closer in the second half of the season between Lando and Oscar. There were a few mistakes by Lando throughout the season, as you can, you know, as every driver, you know, made. I think it was mostly in quali. You know, he didn't get any pole positions this year, and I do think there was an opportunity to perhaps, you know, maybe get one or two. I'm thinking of the mistakes in Qatar, where he made a little mistake into the final corner, and then also Abu Dhabi last time out. But listen, I am, you know, just nitpicking because Lando has had an exceptional season. There is no doubt about it. The one thing about Lando's season is that even before he got the upgraded car in Austria, he was still, I mean, punching above the car's weight, scoring some decent points in some of the races, you know, troubling some of the Alpines. So it's not as if Lando Norris just turned up when the car suddenly got good. He has been good throughout the entire season, but again, when he did get that McLaren, which was, you know, the second best car for quite a few races, he was just podium after podium, some really solid weekends. I'm thinking, you know, going back to the likes of Brazil, where yes, it was a bit of a boring weekend. He didn't really battle with too many people, but it was just a solid weekend from start to finish. Attacked Max Verstappen at some point. So that was just a pure pace weekend from Lando. And again, if it wasn't for Max Verstappen, he probably would have had a win this season. So a little bit unlucky on that front, but still a fantastic season for Lando. But yeah, he just misses out on my top three. Coming in at number 3, I have got Lewis Hamilton. Now, Lewis has had, in my opinion, a bit of a maybe underrated season, because I still found it quite shocking, you know, in the last kind of 5 or 6 races that he was pushing Checo for second in the drivers. You know, unfortunately, no wins for him this season, but he did get that 1 pole position at the Hungarian Grand Prix, 6 podiums as well, and of course, that missed podium at the United States Grand Prix, which would have been his 7th had it not been for the disqualification. In terms of, you know, him versus George, it's been kind of a tale of two halves, hasn't it? Because in qualifying, Lewis is actually the only person on this list where, even though him and George are 11-11 in qualifying, overall, he was just on average, in terms of the average quali gap, just slower than George. But I mean, what is that, 200ths of a second? It's kind of negligible. But in the races is where we have really seen the quality that Lewis Hamilton has. I mean, again, 11-11 in qualifying, but 15-6 in Lewis's favor in the Grand Prix, and that shows in the championship. I mean, I still come back to the fact that in the last 5 or 6 races, he was battling with Sergio Perez, with him in a Red Bull for second in the drivers, and I think that just underpins how impressive his season really is. And I mean, even towards the end of the season, he's finished quite comfortably, even despite the disqualification in Austin, where he could have got second. He has still finished comfortably 3rd in the championship, and I think it's been that kind of consistency that has been underrated about Lewis's season, because whilst their headline performances haven't been maybe as impressive as perhaps, you know, a Norris or a Sainz, who, of course, you know, Carlos Sainz won a race in Singapore, I think what has been the bedrock of Lewis's season has been that consistency. Even though that Mercedes has been so up and down, you know, in the hands of both of the drivers, especially in qualifying, actually. I mean, you know, both of the drivers have been knocked out in Q2 a couple of times this season. In the races, he has always come back, and in the races, even when perhaps the car hasn't been able to finish on the podium, he has always been in that kind of top 5, top 6, scoring kind of decent points, and that is why he is 3rd in the championship. And again, the only 2 times that he hasn't scored points this season was in, of course, when he got disqualified in Austin, and Qatar, when he made that mistake and crashed into George. And I mean, again, if he doesn't make that mistake in Qatar, you've got to think, you know, he probably finishes on the podium. I think the McLarens actually in Qatar in qualifying under-delivered relative to that pace. So, you know, they were helped by the fact that the 2 Mercedes took each other out. And had it not been for that disqualification where he finished 2nd, Lewis would have finished in the points in every single race this season. So that's the consistency that I'm talking about. And I think it is just, by the way, that crash in Qatar that, you know, just puts him in 3rd. Had it not been for that crash, I think I probably would have put him in 2nd place. But yeah, those are the very fine margins. But again, I think Lewis has had maybe an underrated but still a stellar season in terms of consistency. And yeah, that is why he is in 3rd. We are into the top 2, and whilst I'm sure you can guess who is going to be at number 1, in 2nd place as my runner-up, the 2nd best driver of 2023 in my opinion, is Fernando Alonso. Now, again, it was super close between Fernando, Lewis, and Lando. To be honest, again, you can put any of them in any order and I think it would be fine. And I mean, in terms of how close, it was in that kind of upper midfield, I've got the driver standings right here. Fernando ended up just clinching on to 4th place in the drivers behind Lewis on 206 points. Leclerc just behind him in 5th, with that really kind of strong into the season, also on 206 points. And Lando just 1 point behind in 6th place on 205. So it was unbelievable between all of these drivers, and also Sainz a further kind of 5 points back on 200. But when it comes to Fernando Alonso coming into a brand new team, by the way, which again has gone kind of completely unnoticed because of the way he just came in and straight away delivered bang on right from the very first race. But that's not an easy thing for most drivers, but Fernando, with his skill, quality, and just experience, just came to Aston Martin and fit like a hand in a glove. This season he has had 0 wins, 0 pole positions. Arguably could have had a pole position in Monaco, but if it were not for that incredible lap by Max Verstappen. But 8 podiums. He has scored, I think he is the only driver kind of in that upper midfield who has scored every single one of his team's podiums. So, 8 podiums for Aston Martin, 8 for Fernando, which is just unbelievable. He's absolutely demolished Lance Stroll, 17-4 in race head-to-head, 19-3 in qualifying, and over a 3/10 average gap. I think the reason why Fernando is in 2nd place is purely down to the fact that I think he's made just a few less mistakes than the likes of Lewis and Lando, and his consistency this season, because as good as the Aston Martin was at the beginning of the year, it definitely dropped off in kind of the last kind of third of the season. Yes, he still got kind of that podium in Sao Paulo, but that was also a weekend where the McLaren was the better car compared to the Aston Martin. But yeah, but it's just his consistency, even when the car, forget, how good he was at the beginning of the season. I think he got like 6 podiums in 7 races or something like that, always kind of up there in 2nd place or 3rd place. But even at the back end of the season, he was still scoring points. He has reached Q3 20 times this season, which is tied with only Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc, which, those two are considered some of the best, qualifiers on the grid. And so despite the fact that maybe qualifying is not his forte, he has still been unbelievably consistent in qualifying. He has scored points in all but 3 races this season. And I just think, he's undoubtedly carried Aston Martin. Yes, he's had an easy teammate, there's no doubt about it. And that's what made it, I think, quite close between him and Lewis, because Lewis does have a much kind of more difficult teammate. But Fernando is in a brand new team, a brand new environment, and just how good he is at the age that he is. There is no doubt in my mind that if you give him still a race-winning and championship-winning car, whilst I'm not going to say that, he can beat Max Verstappen, he could definitely still challenge for a world title. He can definitely still push Max to his absolute limit. He is just as good as he's ever been. And this season, again, at the age of 42, he is just proving it time after time. And yeah, he is my 2nd best driver of 2023, undoubtedly. What an amazing season for Fernando Alonso in his first year at Aston Martin. Of course, coming in at number 1, the driver who perhaps I don't have as much to say is Max Verstappen. I mean, again, what can I say? Let's just run through some of these stats first of all. 575 points, absolutely insane. 19 wins out of 22 races, 12 pole positions, so he's clearly slacking there, and 21 podiums. He only failed to finish on the podium at the Singapore Grand Prix. And I mean, versus Sergio Perez, who's, Sergio Perez is no mug, but he is no Max Verstappen, that is for sure. 20-2 in race head-to-heads, 20-2 in qualifying, and over 3/10 on average in terms of their quali gap. He has broken so many records. What is it? Most wins, most laps led, most podiums in a season, most points as well. A 3-time world champion. And I think, do you know what, when it comes to why Max Verstappen has been the best driver, it's not even the races where he dominated and, finished by, got a Grand Slam and, beat everyone by 20 seconds. It's the races where Red Bull genuinely could have lost, and potentially lost the race. And I'm thinking of races like Zandvoort, for example, where even throughout all of the craziness and all of the madness, Max Verstappen, he has never opened the door for disaster for Red Bull, even when the car perhaps has been actually quite close to the midfield. I mean, I remember Spain during the qualifying was quite a tricky car to drive, but Max Verstappen, he just always delivered, didn't he? And I mean, of course, it does help when you have the best car on the grid, but he has still been, he's been the definition of a great driver, arguably has had the greatest ever individual season in Formula 1 history. And there is a video on my channel that I'm going to do about Max Verstappen. Don't you worry about that. So yeah, I don't have too much more to say about Max. He has had, again, arguably the greatest season a driver could have in Formula 1, and he has been undoubtedly the driver of the season. Well, there you have it. That is my top 5 best drivers of 2023. Don't forget to let me know your top 5s in the comments box below. I can't wait to see what you all have to say and how my list compares to yours. If you did enjoy this video, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.